does it mean to be covered to us? You were talking. You go ahead. You started talking about it earlier.
Well, I've been wearing niqab now for 19 years, alhamdulillah. And I guess from different communities and even different sort of years, you see so much of a change in the sort of covered landscape, if you like. So when I became Muslim, you either didn't wear any covering at all, or you wore the dowdiest hijab you could find, like in those days. I wrote about this, and the whole thing of, the abayas with the big padded sleeves and the puffy sleeves, padded shoulders, the big brass buttons down the front with like a little granny hijab. That's all you could find. If you wanted to get covered, you had to get dowdy. That's just how it worked. And then sort of, you found more people sort of making different styles of abaya that were maybe more suitable for here. So this was before they started importing from Saudi. Because at that time, really the whole Saudi black abaya thing, it wasn't really the fashion. Certainly not where I was. It was, maybe like browns and greys and stuff like that. And you had the triangle hijab that you pin here and then you pin it on the side. And then I went to a different community where they were wearing the half jilbab and the jilbab and niqab. And again, it was tailors making it. But it was just something that you did as an expression of your faith. And for me, my journey was always, the more I knew, the more I covered. That's just how it worked for me. Now, you just find such a plethora of experiences, so many different interpretations of what hijab is and what hijab isn't. And I think it's kind of a minefield now, I think there's a lot of ignorance, possibly. And also there's a lot more temptation and pulls of nafs within the hijab space, which weren't there when I first started covering. Because when I started covering, you put on hijab because you knew it was wajib. That's all you knew.
How long ago was that for you?
That's about 19 years ago, 20 years ago. So I've been Muslim 21 years, I want to say. So that time, if you wore hijab, really, it was because you believed you had to wear it. And you wore it. And you tried to do your little best with it. But at the end of the day, it was a religious duty.
Right.
Now I think hijab is so much more about culture, identity, identifying. There's more of a pull towards looking a certain way when you're wearing hijab. That, I'm covered, but I'm still ... I'm covered, but I'm still funky. Cool. I'm covered, but I'm still cool. I'm covered, but I'm still hot. And I think that is something that's real. And I think especially the younger generation are susceptible to all of that, so it's not just a covering as a religious obligation, it's also an identifying thing. I'm one of those hijabis, or, I'm a hijabi, but I'm still, so that's what I've seen.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so I became a hijabi before I became a Muslim.
Really?
Yes, and that was we're now 2017, so that was about 33 years ago.
Wow.
Long time ago.
Mashallah.
And it's a long story, which I, won't do now, but it was my sort of discovering hijab that brought me to be interested in Islam, and then I became a Muslim. It all happened in a very short period of time, but that was the process of it. And so for me, putting on hijab originally, on a very, very deeply personal level, was a political statement, really, that before it was a religious statement.
Okay.
So it was I'm tired of the objectification of women.
Yeah.
And this looks like a really cool solution to that.
Okay, yeah.
Then I became a Muslim.
Right.
And then I agree with you that in those years, it was about wajib. It was about, this is a religious obligation. There were a lot of books out at the time that tried to explain, we put on hijab because of A, B, C, D.
Oh, I love those. Come on, bring some of your best ones.
I don't love those. Actually, this was in 1985, 86, 87, and I would get really offended by them. And so I quit reading them. Okay. Actually, around 1987, I quit reading any book written by a man in English for many years. I would read heritage texts, Ibn Hisham, Ibn Kathir and things like this. But books that had been written by men from that very male perspective, very misogynist or patriarchal perspective, especially when it had to do with a woman's dress.
Right.
I couldn't stomach it. I couldn't stomach it. So I think for many years for me personally, it became this, this is my religious obligation and this is how I live. You're right. When I think about this culture of today and how it's interesting, I haven't done a lot of deep thinking about it, so I might be doing a little bit of thinking and talking at the same time.
Which is always good.
It's interesting that it's like our young people, they want to hold on to
Yes.
the outer expression of being a Muslim, while at the same time holding on to, maybe they're a little afraid to fall into some of the traditional cultures that we've grown. And so if they dress like that traditional culture, which has a lot of trouble, maybe it's just too much. So they still want to be hijabi. They want to express, they want to say, I'm Muslim. And you're
yes, identification.
But they don't want to fall into that, maybe. I'm not sure. And I think that it's, I'm always really appreciative of young people and older people and everyone who's holding on to hijab in this day and age. Yeah. Because even though we are, even though we're wearing this standard that says, and by standard I mean like a flag, we're the flagship that says, hello, Muslim community. We can't really hide if you're wearing hijab. And so even though we're there, even though we are standing in that space of really being open and vulnerable, we're strong.
Yeah.
And so even though there is sort of this fashionable thing, say the capitalist culture, I suppose, coming in as well.
I think, exactly. Because for me, it's like our young people, when we became Muslim, it was as if you had given up the world. You came from wherever you came from. If you came from middle class, working class, money, not money, whatever. When you came to the deen and you came to the ummah, it was as if, this certainly for reverts, maybe returnees as well, but definitely for reverts, you gave up that dunya, okay? And you were all about, what do I need Islamically? What do I need to do Islamically? Who do I need to be Islamically? A lot of women especially went through that, but I think men as well. But whatever you had planned before you became Muslim, a lot of those plans were put to the side. So when you're growing up and you're not Muslim, you've got a roadmap, right? So you go to school, you go to high school, you go to college, you get a job, then you meet somebody, you get engaged, you buy a house, you get married, you have your 2.5 kids and a dog and whatever, right? So there was a roadmap. When we became Muslim, we detoured completely from that roadmap. So there was no necessarily college degree, necessarily job, necessarily mortgage. All of that is just like, now it's unknown. So I think many of us, whether, knowingly or unknowingly, we gave up that version of the dunya because we wanted to prioritize deen. And I think that because we gave it up, we cut off a lot of the influences of the society around us. Because we were like, no, we're Muslim. We have our own standard. This is who we are. This is what we imbibe. This is what we take into ourselves. This is what we think about. This is what we read. If you remember, I don't know what it's like for you, but for us, certain things, we went through a time of not reading novels anymore. It's haram. You don't read fashion magazines. Haram. It's full of haram. Like, why am I going to spend my time doing that? Full of haram, right? This generation is not like that.
No.
This generation has, if you like, suckled from globalized culture, as well as their parents and their faith community. So they are just as much hijabi as Kim Kardashian. They have equal, because this is the generation that grew up watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and enjoying it and laughing at the same jokes as everybody else in society because they get it. You see what I'm saying? So for them, I think the hijab is something that is still within them because, as you said, they still identify as Muslim. But equally, the standards of beauty, the standards of how you want to present yourself, what you think is cool, what you think is acceptable, is not cultural at all. It's the mainstream culture. It's the globalized culture that they've grown up with. So they're not being schizophrenic in that sense. It's like it is actually part of them. And I don't think you can not have it a part of you unless you actively give it up and you actively say, I do not want that for myself anymore. But if you grew up in the West, that's what you know. Unless, of course, you grew up in the bubble we were talking about, where you were kept away from those influences. But most Muslim kids are not like that. Most Muslim kids grew up with 50 Cent.
Yeah.
We think they didn't, but they did.
Of course
they grew up with Beyonce. They've grown up with these singers and with the actresses and they've grown up in the culture. They've grown up in the celebrity culture. So they are just as, and I hate to say they, like I'm this old fogey and I don't get it, but I do see from a different space. But you see it from a you have a sense of distance from it. And you can see that, I kind of get why you want to do all the strobing and the, and the contouring and everything, because everyone your age is doing it. And everyone you follow on Instagram is doing it. And even hijabis are doing it. So it's like, come on, who do you have to be to say, I don't want that for myself? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that there really are one part of their Muslim heritage and however many other parts of the culture that we live in. And they're trying to straddle both worlds, and they don't want to give up either one. They don't want to give up the Islam completely.
No.
But they can't fully commit because they want this too. They want the fame, they want the looks, they want the admiration, they want the kudos, they want the appreciation of what that offers as well. So they're really trying to kind of, you know, these two ships, you know, the boats that are kind of like going like this, and they're trying to
One foot in each
trying to
boat.
steady their way and trying to keep them together going forward. SubhanAllah, sometimes they're succeeding and sometimes they're not. But I think that's really what's behind it is I don't want to lose out. I think nowadays kids, they don't want to lose out. Even adults. Some adults, when they were younger, they were hardcore on the deen. They didn't have TV. Come on. Oh, I don't know what it was like for you guys in the States, but for us, definitely, there was a time no one had TV. Before YouTube, you know, like people didn't have TVs in their house.
Right.
Now you go to people's houses, like the screen is bigger than the front door, you know?
Most of the time, the screen is bigger than the front door.
Exactly, right? Exactly. It makes sense. But the whole idea of we want to have it all now, whereas 20 years ago, you believed that you could not have it all, you had to choose. Whereas now, I think and maybe we were too extreme then. Maybe we didn't have to give up the whole dunya. But now, definitely, we're much more driven by, no, I want this too. I'm not prepared to give that up. I want the nice house. I want the property empire, you know. I want to publish a cookbook, you know. I want to do well in my field. I want a university degree, you know. I want a fantastic body, whatever. Those days, we didn't even care about that stuff. We were just like, as long as I have deen, I'm good.
So
you know?
21 years ago, you said, so you're talking about end of the 90s. So I became Muslim in the 80s, and then really, I think I ran away from the culture you're describing.
Okay.
If I think about it, I think really that my decision to really move overseas, which in my case was Damascus, had a lot to do with my feeling, I don't know, this is maybe not very good to say, but like my feeling really, like I don't want to eat with my hands and I don't want to eat on the floor.
So you went to Syria?
Yeah, because in Syria they eat at dining room tables with forks, you know, like it's a very French society.
Right.
And I also, the idea, like when you're talking about giving up university degrees and things like that wasn't my experience at all. It was more, not at all. So I'm thinking about this idea of covered and hijab and all the different things we're dealing with and your different experience in the 90s and mine in the 80s. I think I sort of tried to skip the 90s.
Okay. Yes, well, you skipped countries, so.
Yeah. And my experience, and I was in my own bubble, of, I had young children.
Yeah.
So I had young children and I was studying Islam as fast as I could. I didn't really have time. And we were in a country that didn't have online access. And I learned about hijab for me at that time. I had to, like, Damascus is very French.
Yes.
The first thing anyone ever gave me when I arrived there.
A shop?
No, it was a shoe cleaner.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because in America, we let our shoes get dusty.
We're scruffs. In the West, we're total scruffs.
Yeah.
We are. All of us are.
But in Damascus, like, you clean your shoes every time you step on the street, and before you don't walk around with dirty shoes. It's just like, I gotta look at my shoes now and see.
Right.
But that's just like, and so that was really eye-opening for me. And I think as a result, I was very young, and I developed sort of an attitude of elegance towards hijab. Now, you know, I always wear the same thing, so people may not really think that about me. But when I think about hijab, I think of it as this possibility of elegance and seriousness, and I really shy away from. I know exactly what you're talking about when you talk about, like, you have to be dowdy, because I had those moments when I was still in the States in the late 80s. But I learned from my sisters and elders, Damascene women, you know, that elegance is the only way. And I mean, I was very American, so I had hems that needed hemming and buttons that needed putting back on and things like that. But you couldn't, like, I learned quickly, you can't leave the house like that. Like, you can't go out and represent your religion any other way other than elegantly.
Okay.
And so that really has become for me a really important thing. And I really struggle with, I don't struggle with a lot of the things when we're talking about sort of the other people's hijab. And, there's a lot of politics out there about how not to other people and talk about that. But I'm an old lady, so, old people
you
look
can
at
say
things.
other people all day long.
Right. So my issue really, if I think about it, if I have a thing that I get uptight about, it's much more dowdiness than it is anything else. I also have things like, because I started on this road as sort of anti-objectification of women.
It was like a feminist statement almost.
Yes,
when you took on
very
hijab,
much
right?
so. Very much so. I really struggle with the trying to turn hijab into an objectification of women.
Boom.
So I do struggle with that.
Yeah.
I do struggle with that.
I think what you're saying, I think really it is something that as a community and as individuals, we do need to be so much more aware of. Because at the end of the day, the capitalist system has no morals. It has no ethics.
Right.
If we can make money from your hijab, we will. If we can make money from dressing you in your religion, if that's what you insist on doing, we'll do that. And so what you see now, as you say, is the hijabi scene looks like any other fashion scene. You see the same type of bodies, the same type of look, the same type of poses, the same makeup, everything. The only difference is that they have a scarf. And it goes from objectification to almost sexualization because of the way that it's being.
Well, those are together, right? I mean, those are really together.
Yeah.
So
and I think that as an industry, obviously we've worked with hijab houses. We know some of the people who started them, and it's difficult because they are now competing directly with large corporations like H&M. H&M starts to do modest wear, starts to do scarves, etc. The hijabi fashion industry has to keep up. So now that they have fashion weeks and they have fashion parades and they have fashion magazines, we are now part of an industry. So it's going to be respectful of the culture, but it's going to be material.
But I want to say that I think it's cool that we have a modest industry, a modesty industry, because 30 years ago there was no such thing.
No, there was nothing.
And so I do think it's cool that we have it's like a modesty industry, or this industry where clothing is being designed
for us in that sense.
Yeah, for women, whether they're Muslim or Jewish or Mormon. Mormons also wear more modest clothing. That is comfortable for women who are not comfortable becoming part of sort of eye candy of other people.
Yeah.
And people struggle with Muslims because of this piece of fabric that is the hijab. We don't talk a lot out there about the rest of the clothing. At least that's in this day and age. I don't see that a lot. My sister might tell me something like, well, you don't wear pants or something like that. But other than like inner family things. Yeah. And personal choice and stuff like that, we don't talk a lot about what's shouldered down, right? We just talk about that hijab, which the hijab is the standard of I'm a Muslim. Yeah. But modesty industry really is selling skirts and longer sleeve blouses and wider clothes. Yeah. And I think that I haven't done a lot of thinking about that, but I think it's important for Muslims to be happy about that modesty industry.
Yeah. I think for me, it's not the industry per se. I think it's the way that the industry is going in the footsteps of the mainstream fashion industry. In terms of just, like I said, how
they model them and things like that.
How they model them, how they style them. So we've got abayas being modeled by women without hijab. And it's like, okay, right. How does that work? Like, if you're not wearing hijab, why are you wearing an abaya? You don't live in Jeddah. Or an abaya, which is open with skinny jeans underneath. And so I think for me, the thing that I find a bit puzzling today is, and I just saw a tweet on Twitter that made me think about this, is the hijab subjective, or are there standards set by Islam? Or is it completely subjective? Because I think what it was in a magazine, and what the author of the article said is that whose hijab is it anyway? If we're going to fight for the right of women to be able to wear niqab, we must also defend the turban skinny jean wearing sister. And that made me think, okay, that's interesting. How subjective do we now believe the hijab is? If my version of hijab is to wear a head wrap and a catsuit, should I respect that? Is that fine? Or is there something Islamically that says there are conditions and there is a framework
Well,
for
yeah,
this,
but
you know?
see, I get a little bit uncomfortable here in this space.
Yeah, so do I. I think everybody does, to be honest. Like, what's your take on it?
Well, with the place that I'm uncomfortable, I really see hijab as personal law as opposed to public law. And so I really don't think it's the right of the state or the mosque or the media or anyone else to tell women how they should dress and how they should represent their faith. I choose to dress the way I dress, and I would be really offended if someone told me, why do you tuck your scarf in? You should have it over. Because some people will say that. And I have 1,000 ways to tell them Islamically how they're wrong and how they don't understand Arabic and they didn't interpret the verse correctly. But in the end, that gaze on me, that panopticon gaze that says, I'm going to decide, someone else is going to decide how I am living an Islamic law. So Islamic law, we have public law, we have private law. I really think that I think of hijab as private law, that it is a woman's choice, and that's part of the reason that it's so important to have Islamic education, because if women don't know their religion, then they can't really make spiritual choices that help them on the path to Allah. Because if we're just making choices because of how we think about how people see us, whatever that is, whether it's wearing full niqab because I want my sisters to respect me, or whether it's wearing, as you said, skinny jeans and a turban because I want my friends in high school to like me. Yeah. To me, it's the same side, two sides of the exact same coin.
No. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but without that education in there for women to really understand what are what's the fiqh of hijab?
Yeah.
And
I think that's what I'm saying about, like, is there a framework? And in fiqh, there is a framework.
Yes, there is, but I don't think there is. And the reason I get uncomfortable is because for so many years, men have taken that framework and said to women, okay, now you have to dress like this. And women have said it to women too sometimes, and women who are trying to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have done just one little thing have been chased away because of that sort of outward
policing kind of thing.
The panopticon gaze. And I'm frustrated by that and concerned about it. And in this postmodern age where everything is all about how I feel and my truth and my personal truth, that's going to be the way it is unless we help. And it will remain, the thing about postmodernism is that in a way, Islam is such a beautiful religion that we are capable of interacting with postmodernism in such a way that we can still hold on to the basic foundational tenets and beliefs. And so a young woman who wants to interpret hijab in her own way, it's not really problematic as long as she has the freedom and the opportunity to learn about her religion. So she's not just picking it up from someone who has, because there's all sorts of rhetoric out there. There's the rhetoric that tells her it's not farad. That's a common rhetoric out there. And I just want to say right here and right now that hijab is farad. And if
I knew you were about to drop a gem. I just knew
that really wasn't a gem. It was just a kind of a basic hijab is farad. But the thing is that I want people who have doubt to feel uncomfortable in their doubt. Who have doubt that hijab is farad, I want them to be uncomfortable in their doubt because hijab is farad. It is a wajib. It is a necessity. And, we can talk about style and all that stuff, but it's farad. And so all the people out there, note that so many of them are men. I don't like men who tell women that they have to wear hijab in a certain way, and I don't like men standing up somewhere and telling women, "Oh, actually, I'd rather see more of you." Like I don't want either one. I want men to sit down and pass the mic.
Okay.
When it comes to hijab, because you're not wearing it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say, "Oh, men, go and wear a feather sticking out of your nose so that we can know that you are Muslims." He said for Muslim women to dress in a certain way. And يُعْرِفْنَ وَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. And I think that it's a strength and an agency to women. And so the rhetoric out there that goes back and forth about, well, is hijab farad? Is it actually not? What about what this person says? What about what this person says? Well, wait a minute, what about this? Well, is there any hadith? Is there blah, blah, blah?
Do you not think that that's like fishing? Do you not think that a lot of that comes from fishing? I have two questions for you. One, You know, the whole idea, or maybe it's not, maybe it's not. If for me, it feels like you'd like it not to be, because that would make things better for you or easier for you or whatever.
Easier to fit in.
That's where you'd rather be, basically. So if it's not, oh great, that's how I'm taking it off one time. That's the first thing. Second thing is, where did it come from? Is it a new thing? Is it something that's becoming more prominent now? This kalam, I'll tell you why, because in Egypt, I think it was in the 80s or 90s, what's his name? Omar, there was a big speaker, and he spoke to the middle classes. And he did a lot of dawah. He's not around so much anymore, but he did a lot of dawah. And in those days, he managed to get a lot of university students to start wearing the hijab, the khimar, yani. He was a huge speaker. Everybody loved him. He was very charismatic and everything. But he was a modern guy. You know, he wasn't the old sheikh style, modern guy. And what we found around the Thawra, around the revolution, just afterwards, okay, when you had Morsi coming into power and then the whole debacle with the Tahrir Square and everything, you had a lot of that generation of women starting to question whether the hijab was actually fard. And a lot of kalam in the media and in the community, in the culture, actually it's not wajib. Actually it's not. So more and more people started coming out saying, actually it's not fard. Or people would say, it's not who I am.
Right.
It's not me.
Yeah.
I've been wearing it for 10 years, for 20 years, but it's not me. Khalas, I'm not the person that I once was. I'm not that person anymore. It doesn't suit the person I am to wear hijab anymore. So you had a huge movement of women taking off their scarves. Mothers, you know, they were like big women. They weren't young. By this time, they had children in high school and everything. Taking off their hijabs. And I think taking off your hijab is like it's a continuum. You know, it doesn't just,
right.
you don't stay with...
They stopped praying 10 years ago.
Yeah, you don't take off your scarf and keep wearing modest clothes, because at the end of the day, khalas, it's done. Take off the hijab, next thing you know, it's like, you know...
I understand what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But I'm wondering whether this is a new thing. Is it a millennial thing? The whole conversation about actually it's not fard, more voices coming up now saying that it's not wajib, or has it always been? Have they always been those voices?
Well,
I feel like I didn't hear this when I became Muslim. That's why. Like, I never used to hear that argument. People never used to come out and say it's not fard. But now,
well, there were people talking about it in the 80s for sure. I remember someone in California bringing this discussion to California, and there hasn't gone back and forth. But I think that possibly with the flattening of the internet and the choosing of voices and things like that, and the elevation of certain voices, and the sort of basic difficulty in the modern age of saying, "Hey, I'm Muslim," of claiming your Islam in front of everyone, that it has become more of a friendly rhetoric that says it's not wajib, and it's unfortunate that. It's an unfortunate thing. And there's a lot of, I know the theological and legal discussion, it's very long, and I know where people get this idea that it's not wajib from.
Okay.
But the argument that it's wajib is clearer and stronger because it's Quranic. However, I would say that it's not public law. So that gets back to my earlier point.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we also go wrong when we try to police women, whether we police them at home or we police them in the mosque or we police them really anywhere. Because in policing women, we take away their agency. And we take away their agency, we take away their ability to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on their own.
I think, again, it goes back to what we were talking about before about control.
Yeah.
Is a society that is controlled
to
keep out the negative influences, to keep out harmful practices, to keep out harmful ideas. You know what this is, you know where I'm going with this, right? You've read The Clockwork Orange. We know about 1984. We've seen societies that we know, where it seems that the theory is, if it's controlled, you can keep it halal and you can keep it safe. And I think that informs a lot of the policing that you're talking about. It's the control, because it's the idea, and I'm not saying it's the wrong idea, I'm just saying I think it's the idea that if we let go, all hell's going to break loose. Right. They're all going to be stripping off those hijabs and running down the street.
And everything else.
Exactly, right? And we will lose complete control. And the society will be destroyed. And I think a lot of societies, a lot of Islamic societies are based on that idea. Women are easier to control than men.
Yeah.
And if you control the men will be safe.
Right.
See that?
And that's why they're keeping men safe. Back to patriarchy. But again,
As long as the men are okay,
as
we're
long as
good.
the men are okay, we're fine.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to the point of education, because we can, if we don't, and that's why we're such a beautiful religion that encourages education, encourages learning, encourages knowing. Because as long as we have avenues of education open for women, and we have a positive culture, I think we can guarantee that the majority of people are going to find goodness and truth. Mm-hmm. And if we are sort of bullies and have a negative culture, people are going to run from what's painful. Mm. And so when we talk about this word cover that we're supposed to be talking about here today, this idea of covering women, in a way, what's become problematic is that hijab, or the hijab, this way of dressing, is something to help us get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I would say prevents us from being objectified. Mm-hmm. Not always. People can still objectify you. I know that. Mm-hmm. But it's a step in that direction. Yeah. And yet, instead of making it this piece of agency that I really see, and voice that I see it as, we've turned it into something to control and actually cover women and cover their voices and cover their presence in society. So that instead of saying, hey, they're wearing hijab and they come into the mosque, they're going in the public space. It's like Islam has given women the opportunity to be in every public space without being subjected to, and I know there will be people who will be like, well, they'll be subjected to anything, but at least having some limits on presenting yourself as sexually available. And yet, instead of saying, yay, we've got this, let's be public, let's grow our communities, we said, oh, no. Go home, go back, go into your house, shut the door, don't come to the mosque, don't go out, don't go shopping, don't do all these things. And we can talk about that for a long time, but the basic result of that for many years now has been that we're losing. We're the losers.
I think maybe before, you had to kind of accept what the community wanted from you or demanded from you. And if you didn't, the cost of it was losing everything. Yeah. Okay, because we know this. Oh, you married the wrong person, you were caught in a compromising situation, you lose everything. Yeah. Okay. But I think now people know that there's more out there in a way. So if I leave the confines of this community, I can still get married, I can still have a nice life, I can have a job, I can travel the world. There's a world out there for me. Maybe a generation or two ago, it was like, that's the end of the world. Like, I can't lose my family. Whereas I think young people now, we're much more individualistic, much more about, as you said, my truth, myself, living for me, which is the antithesis of cultural cohesion, if you like, community cohesion, because the community is based on everybody towing the line. Right. And everybody caring what the community thinks. Right. If you have a community of people who don't care what the community thinks, there's no community, right? Right. And there is no community control, good or bad.
Right. Correct.
If you've got a generation of kids who do not care really what the community thinks, or are prepared to risk the anger or the wrath of the community, you've lost control. Yeah. And that's what I think our generation is so afraid of, losing control of the kids, because it's a big world out there and it's scary.
Yeah, and I think we've lost control. I think it's gone, and maybe in different spaces it's different, different countries it's different, but I think in general, we've lost enough control now that we have to find a different way to talk to them.
Okay, thank you, because now they've got a choice between, do I believe in Islam or not? Yeah. Do I believe in God or not?
And within Islam, what do I believe
exactly.
What's my truth in Islam?
Yeah, exactly. And I think previously there was just so much, like you said, there's so much more control. You sheltered the kids, you kept them boxed off from everything else. They grew up believing this is all there is, and this is you will be. I remember doing an interview with kids, and they weren't Muslim, they were Hindu actually. And it was around my book Boy versus Girl, because it's set in an Asian community and stuff. And it was about, boys and girls and gender imbalance and stuff like that. And I remember the boys saying that when I'm at school, I'm a completely different person. I know that. When I'm at school, I do A, B, C, D. But when I come home, I know what's expected and I do that. And I am going to have exactly the same situation in my house because I'm going to marry a girl my parents accept, and we're going to have the same type of household because that's our culture. Now, this generation here, no, I don't know how many kids are on that, because when I see Muslims openly in the public space saying, I'm a lesbian, I'm gay, I'm a goth, punk, rocker, whatever, not to say that that's not Muslim, but the point is that you know your community doesn't expect that and does not accept that, but you're public with it anyway. That means there's a degree of separation there that previous generations didn't have.
Right, in community.
Exactly, in that community. You are prepared to even separate yourself from that community in order to live your truth, in order to be true to yourself.
Let me play the devil's advocate here a little bit. Do you think that maybe we helped to cause that a little bit by trying to be so controlling? By raising our children and talking to women as though they didn't have agency, so that they began to look at hijab as something without agency and look at other options where they might be able to find themselves. Like you said earlier about women who took off their scarf because they didn't see themselves in it anymore. That makes me think that somewhere along the line, they lost connection to who they are as Muslims.
As believers.
Yeah. And so if hijab doesn't represent who you are, what happened? What happened there? That'd be a good research point.
If hijab doesn't represent who you are now, who have you become?
Yeah, exactly.
And how did you get there? Right?
Yeah. And what fault? And maybe I'm
and
too quick.
Who's involved there?
Yeah.
Who's involved in that progression?
And why? Again, if we go back to things like, you as a woman are not respected in your space, their faith spaces. So I'm a woman. I go to university. People say, good work. Good job. Can I support you? Can I fund you to study? I say, yeah.
I'll take that.
Thank you. I go to a job place and they say, hey, you're doing a good job here. Can you come over here and get this promotion? I say, sure, thank you. I go somewhere else, maybe to have dinner or something with some people, and they welcome me and they say, come on in, have a seat at the head of the table. I'm a guest here, whatever. Go to church, even in my hijab, right? And they tell me, oh, welcome. Thank you for being a speaker in our church today. Come sit up here, have some coffee, take a check for $50 home or something. They don't pay very well, but but they smile a lot. And then I go to my mosque, right? And I'm standing behind this thick old, ugly curtain. My carpet smells. The architecture tells me I'm not wanted. The imam says be quiet. The other women tell me be quiet. Everyone tells me get out of here. I look for space in my Muslim space to actualize
my potential, who you are, and what you bring.
Faith. Yes, exactly. Yes. And I don't find it. Well, hello. What's going to happen unless I'm lucky and I've got good friends and good mentors and good sahba and companions who are going to help me sort of get over that. What's going to happen is pretty soon I'm going to say, well, you guys don't want me. Yeah. I'm going to try. I'm going to keep trying. And then over here, this space loves me and respects me. Yeah. Why am I going to choose to be in a place where the only thing they like about me is the style of hijab that I wear? For example, maybe I'm being a little bit too flat in my analysis there, but...
No, I hear what you're saying, and I wonder how much that affects young people. But I must say, in the UK, one of the things I love about the British Muslim community is the energy. I just find it extremely energizing to be here. And this is coming from living in a Muslim country for 10 years. Yeah. I come here. For me, Islam is alive here. It's alive and it's well and it's growing. And the thing is, it's one of those things. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Right. And it's always the best of times and worst of times, right? But, the point here, we've got prevent, we've got extremism, anti-terror law, all of this stuff happening. Right. We've got kids who are losing their faith. We've got a lot of difficult issues within the community. But you've also got this creativity and this drive that Muslims have in the UK to actualize their Islam in this context. And I love it. I think it's fantastic. You've got like Muslim biker groups, like bicycle clubs.
And maybe some of the fashionistas are really...
They are doing that.
They're just trying to actualize their faith
This is it.
In a new space.
Exactly. And this is, again, it's the balancing, isn't it? So you want the halal of the dunya. You want some of this dunya, but you want to keep holding to your faith. So when I see hijabis in this space, just doing everything, you know, like hiking mountains and, you know, reading the news, writing books, you know, establishing charities, doing all kinds of stuff.
Can I tell you a funny? So yesterday I met someone I know actually, but I learned something about her yesterday. She's a runner, and she joined actually, like she went to a marathon or something. When she went there in her hijab, in her scarf, and they asked her. She said she was the only. She herself is white, but that she was the only sort of basic white British person there.
Wearing,
yeah, exactly. And they said to her, well, is this proper running attire? And she said, yes, it is. It's proper hijabi running attire. And of course, there's no such thing. It's not like she just made that up. Yeah. She said yes, and they said, oh, okay then, you know? And so she ran in this group. And so when you're talking about sort of doing everything, I really love, first of all, it's really cute because that agency there of, I'm going to go and do what I want, and they're going to ask me, she said, what if I said no? Like,
then what?
Then what are they going to say? Oh, go find some different attire? But she said, yes, she said, this is official hijabi attire. Yeah. And they're like, oh, okay then.
Fair enough.
And so she ran with them. And to me, that's a beautiful story of a hijabi woman who says, yeah, but I want to be active and I want to be outside. And this is my culture.
On the one hand, and on the other hand, I want to respect my faith.
Yeah, and she has the confidence to say to the people asking about the running attire, yeah, it's official.
Blase. Yeah. When we first started publishing Sisters magazine, I remember just before we started working on it, there was an article about Muslim women and sports. This is back in the 90s, yeah? The 90s. Oh, wonderful time.
Oh, the 90s.
This article basically went through almost every type of sport, saying why it was not suitable for Muslim women.
Wow.
Swimming is not suitable because of, you will show your shape. Tennis is not suitable. Football because it's, I think, imitating men. Basketball because of this because of that. Running because of this. All these other things. And then it said, you know, while it is important for you to maintain your health, most sports will be haram because of modesty. Okay? And I remember reading that article and feeling so frustrated because I said, don't you understand that as women we want to live?
Yeah.
Live!
Yes.
Have a life.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, it's not about looking after hubby, making roti, and having the children. It's not about that. I want to live.
There's a machine for the roti now, by the way.
Oh, I need to find out what that one is. But the point is, at that time, it was literally like, you're not allowed to do anything because you're a Muslim woman, and a Muslim woman does 1, 2, 3. She fasts and she obeys her husband, and she stays in her home. And that was it. And now that narrative is obsolete completely. And I'm so glad. I'm actually really glad that it's obsolete because when we were writing the articles, we wanted to give women hope and pride in the fact that I'm a Muslim woman and I have these boundaries that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set for me from His wisdom, from His love for me, from knowing what's best for me. But inside that, there is space.
Yeah.
Within those boundaries, there is more space than your culture is telling me.
Yes.
There is more space here than your
absolutely.
culture is telling me. And I will never allow myself to be enslaved by your culture. Because your culture, that culture, most of the cultures, oppressive.
Yeah.
Islam, it's not oppressive. But your culture, yeah.
And let me also say here that I love cultures with an S. Yes. Love them. Love them. I love different kinds of food, love to visit different kinds of people, love to see different colors and clothes and hear different types of music and all the different parts of a culture that exist. Yeah. But I really like what you said about I won't be enslaved by your culture, because we run a project called Project Lena, and one of the things we do in there is talk to converts at any stage of that conversion about that your culture is valuable wherever you come from. So we did this Project Lena in a place called Islam in Spanish in Houston recently. Yes. And so most of the audience members were from a Hispanic background, which of course I am not. Yeah. Our speaker, Mr. Flight, so I ended up having to do it. And of course, so I did it a little bit more generic, but because I don't know the Hispanic culture, I have an Italian grandmother, but you know,
that's as far as it goes.
As far as it goes, yeah. Maybe I've got German and all this other stuff, but the idea that this culture or names. So, for example, one of the women, I can't remember what her name was, but let's just say, I don't know, Jennifer, okay? This idea that being told as a Muslim, Jennifer is not a Muslim name. Yeah. No, actually, it is a Muslim name because I'm Muslim.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a really new attitude for them.
It is. It's definitely a new attitude.
And this idea of I won't be enslaved in your culture. I don't need to learn how to make biryani to please Allah. I don't need to learn how to make kibbeh, that's the Syrian food, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I was once, as a young person, told, this is a real story. Someone asked me, so what do you cook? Do you cook? Yes, I cook. Oh, what do you cook? Do you make things like kibbeh and kusa mahshi? Or do you still make the food of the kuffar, hamburgers and pizza?
Oh my
Cultural
chauvinism. Wow.
Yeah, I was flabbergasted. I was actually like
that's
stunned.
Ethnocentricity, but like
right
flipped,
there.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was just stunned actually. And
make the food
can you imagine? Wow. And like think about. I mean, just and so I see it as my thing.
What did you say?
Oh, I was flabbergasted.
Wow.
I didn't say much. I wasn't 50.
It was too much.
I was like in my 20s, and I was still, the person who silently, my eyes got as big as a deer in headlights, and I was like, ugh. But now, if I could be there now, I would say, kibbeh and kusa mahshi is food of people of shirk. Because it's developed in a country that had idolatry. And hamburgers are food of the Prophet ﷺ. Because he ate bread and meat. He didn't eat rice. So there. That's what I would say if I could go back all those years and flip it.
Yeah.
Right? But I know we're supposed to be here talking about hijab and covering and this and that. But these things are so intertwined in attitudes and the bullying and what happens there and agency and how we feel.
Yeah. And I think the whole, for me, I really believe that every woman should know that hijab is a journey. It's not a destination.
Yeah.
It's a journey and it's part of the journey. It's not the destination. So some people feel like once they put on hijab in a particular way, they're good. Yeah. But it's just a part of the journey. Okay. And like so many other things, we want to establish it with ihsan.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, is sincerity.
Yes.
ihsan.
And can I just jump in and tell you about this word ihsan? I think you touched on something really important. I think one of the reasons we're struggling with the questions around what kind of hijab is because we've established a culture of halal haram. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we've established this culture that says, is it halal, is it haram? As though things are this sort of black and white. When actually, as a culture, as a Muslim culture, we are supposed to be a culture of ihsan. And ihsan doesn't ask, is it halal, is it haram? Ihsan asks, is it good? Is it better? Is it better? Is it better?
Wow.
Is it better? Can we reach best? That's what ihsan asks. And in that way, it's like a paradigm shift. So all of a sudden when this sort of criticism of a young girl in, what did you call them? You had a name for them. Leggings, let's say. Leggings and a hijab. When all these old ladies like me, like they're all looking at her saying, well, wait a minute. Let me say this, there's good there.
Yeah.
There's good there.
Yeah.
You put on that scarf. You told the world you're Muslim. I'm so proud of you. And you're not wearing shorts,
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. You're not in a
Yeah.
bikini, Alhamdulillah. So, I mean, and maybe next year you'll get better.
Yeah.
And maybe better.
And
maybe
the
better.
important thing is, at the end of the day, for any one of us, and I'm going to put us in there, any one of us to realize that wherever we are on our hijab journey, we just need to constantly be asking ourselves, am I sincere? Can I do better? Like you said, can I do better? And sometimes it's not about dress. Can I do better in my manners? Can I do better in my manners towards other people? Can I do better in my way of speaking to people, or my respecting other people? Whatever it is.
And my adab,
exactly. And it is a continuum. It's part of a journey.
Absolutely.
And as long as you realize that, you yourself don't become complacent, because I think complacency is the enemy of the believer.
Nice.
Once you've got that complacent attitude, that's when the pride gets in, the arrogance comes in.
Judgmental attitudes. Yeah.
You're up here, everybody else is down there. You're up here, you've reached the pinnacle. Everybody else is still trying to catch up. Come on. And that attitude there is the one that pushes people away, like one time. And anyone who's struggling or is making an effort, anyone who meets that judgmental attitude, you know what happens?
Right.
You know what? Whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't take anything you say anymore.
Right.
I've lost respect for you because you've shown yourself to be an arrogant, judgmental, whatever.
Right.
And I'm not interested. So when we talk about earning the love of the people that we want to call to Islam, how can we earn their love? We have to respect them first.
Absolutely, 1,000%.
I respect you and where you are in your journey. And guess what? I love you for the sake of Allah. And I only want what's good for you. And I care about you. And I think when we advise from a place of love and compassion and humility.
And without nafs.
Humility! The nafsy thing. That's the car.
Yeah.
Humility. People feel that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they say thank you. I can't do what you're saying right now. But you know what? I get it, and I thank you for taking the time to tell me that. But if you come on the other way, oh, what are you doing? Oh, don't you know such and such? Or, oh, isn't it time you did da-da-da-da-da?
Or are you really a Muslim? That's the great,
No.
You know.
If you were really Muslim, such and such, you know,
yeah.
if you were, all that stuff comes from arrogance, from a place of feeling like you're better.
Yeah.
People feel it and they run from it straight away.
Yeah.
They run from it. They're not going to take anything from you. So you've just messed up with that person, basically.
And then we've lost, yes, absolutely. And we've lost the, and so just thinking back, circling it back a little bit to the idea of what does it mean to be a hijabi in this day and age. I would say that you started out really sort of talking about how it's really complicated. And I think it is really complicated because it's complicated by the Western gaze that says, oh, you're oppressed. It's a stereotypical sort of thing. Yeah. It's complicated by the Muslim gaze that says, is your hijab good enough?
Expectations on both sides.
Yeah.
Judgments on both sides.
On both sides. And then there's the little complication there of how much do I personally know about the importance and value of hijab within my own faith journey. And I would say that if we're going to work anywhere in society, we need to work here. We need to work on that faith journey for women because we won't have, for me, hijab is about agency. And agency comes forth when knowledge is attached to it.
Yeah, definitely. And when you step in, you know, it's like when you show up. Yeah. I think a lot of people in general coast. They're Muslims, but they're coasting. Well, you could be whatever. You could be Christian and coasting. You could be Jewish and coasting. Yani, you haven't shown up and you haven't really made a true commitment. But when you commit, that's when you've invested. And that's when I think you see the growth happening because now it's something that I value. It's something that I want to do my best at. It's something that I want to achieve ihsan.
And get better and better.
Then you can start
and maybe
growing.
You have a bad day, but then you might do better tomorrow. Yeah. And that sort of acceptance of the growth journey and what it means, I think we'll just become nicer people.
I think more humility in general would just make us so much better as people and so much kinder as a community. Yeah. And I think, and when you're a kinder community, you're a safer community. So people feel that they can make mistakes and be forgiven. Yeah. That they can show up in a bad way and still make it back, you know? That they can make a mistake and everyone knows about it, but they can regain, that reputation and regain people's trust. And, you know, that sense of being a forgiving community and an accepting community, I think that we really struggle with that. But that is definitely another communication and another conversation, subhanAllah. May Allah make it easy for all of us.
I mean, and I think women can start by sort of living in the shelter of one another and...
I like that.
Helping one another. With our outward duty of hijab, because when we can strengthen each other, it becomes easier to do that thing that is a wajib and that is a farad and that is a really sort of key to growing in spiritual experiences. Keep the faith.